My name is Brother-Captain Mordus Kaine, and I am eternally dying within this sarcophagus of ceramite and adamantium. You think that makes me blessed, chosen by the Emperor to serve beyond death, but you don't know what I've seen through these optical sensors for the last 300 years of unending consciousness. I remember the screaming. Not from battle. That would be merciful. The screaming comes from within, from the moment they sealed me into this walking tomb. Every circuit fires like exposed nerves. Every hydraulic pulse feels like blood I no longer possess, trying to flow through arteries that were replaced with cables decades ago. The Tau who encountered me on Agrellan called me the ghost that walks in metal flesh. They were more right than they knew. This is my testimony from beyond the grave I was never allowed to enter. Chapter 1. Brother among brothers. Before the sarcophagus, before the endless mechanical heartbeat that counts my seconds like a funeral dirge, I was flesh and blood like any other space marine. Brother-Captain Mordus Kaine of the Iron Hands 3rd Company, gene seed of Ferrus Manus flowing strong in my enhanced physiology. The year was 741 M41, and the galaxy still held mysteries that seemed conquerable. My brothers and I stood in the reclusium of the strike cruiser, Iron Will, our morning prayers echoing off vault walls adorned with servo skulls and purity seals. The familiar litanies rolled off my tongue with practiced ease. The flesh is weak, but the machine is eternal. How those words would come to mock me in ways I never imagined. The weight of my power armor felt natural then, like a second skin crafted by the finest artificers of Medusa. Every servo responded to my thoughts with precision. The targeting systems overlaid data across my helmet display with crystalline clarity. I could feel my twin hearts beating in synchronous rhythm, pumping enhanced blood through organs that functioned at peak efficiency. In those days, I believed the weakness of flesh was something to be overcome gradually, methodically, with each bionic replacement making us stronger. Brother Captain, Sergeant Vex approached after morning prayers, his own extensive augmentations gleaming in the low light. Half his skull had been replaced with blessed machinery, following a battle with Orc Knobs on Riser Prime. The Tech Marines report successful communion with the machine spirits, all systems operating at 97% efficiency. 97%. In my arrogance, I thought that remaining 3% was our target for improvement. I didn't understand that the 3% was what made us human. Our mission to the Agrellan system seemed routine by Iron Hands standards. Intelligence reports indicated significant Tau expansion in the sector, with their typical efficient colonization patterns establishing supply lines and civilian infrastructure. Command wanted us to conduct deep reconnaissance, assess their military capabilities, and if possible, eliminate key assets to slow their advance. The Tau had always fascinated me from a tactical perspective. Their technology rivaled our own in many aspects. Their battlefield coordination exceeded even veteran guard regiments, and their adaptive strategies showed genuine tactical innovation. Unlike the bestial orcs or the corrupted forces of chaos, the Tau fought with clinical precision and rational thought. They reminded me of ourselves, in some ways. 14 Tau facilities confirmed across 3 worlds. I briefed my company commanders in the strategium. Primary targets include a research installation on Agrellan Prime and 2 orbital defense platforms. The Tau designate this sector Kelshan Sept, translated roughly as patience in the hunt. Their firecast operates with standard pulse rifle configurations, but intelligence suggests experimental weapon systems in development. Captain Thaddeus of 2nd Company, more augmented than most, leaned forward. Their battlesuits concern me, Brother Captain. Reports indicate new configurations with enhanced targeting systems. Our standard engagement doctrines may require adaptation. Adaptation. The Iron Hands prided ourselves on adaptation, on learning from each engagement and improving our methods. Every battle was data to be analyzed, weaknesses to be catalogued and corrected. We approached warfare like a mathematical equation to be solved through superior technology and unwavering logic. The first warning sign came during deployment to Agrellan Prime. Our Thunderhawk gunships encountered no resistance during atmospheric entry, which immediately set my tactical senses on edge. The Tau were many things, but careless was not among them. Their fire warriors should have challenged our approach. Their missile systems should have tracked our descent vectors. Instead, we touched down in a forest clearing 12 kilometers from the primary research facility, and the only sound was the settling of our aircraft's engines and the whisper of wind through alien vegetation. Through my helmet's audio pickups, I could hear the breathing of my brothers, the soft hum of power armor systems, the distant call of native wildlife. Auspex readings, Sergeant Corval, I queried our reconnaissance specialist. Minimal life signs detected, Brother-Captain. Tau biosignatures present at the facility, but concentration appears lower than expected based on intelligence estimates. His augmented eye whirred as it focused on distant heat blooms. Detecting unusual energy readings. Pattern doesn't match standard Tau technology signatures. Unusual energy readings. In hindsight, that should have been our cue to withdraw, to call for additional support, to approach with maximum caution. But we were iron hands, inheritors of the Gorgon's legacy. We had faced down Chaos Dreadnoughts, Tyrannid Biotitans, and Necron constructs. What could the Tau possibly field that would trouble 10 squads of enhanced Space Marines? Our advance through the forest took 3 hours of careful movement. The vegetation was dense but navigable, with purple-leaf trees reaching heights of 40 meters and a canopy that filtered the system's orange star into dappled patterns across the forest floor. Tau pheromone markers were everywhere, territorial indicators and navigation aids that spoke to their efficient organization of this world. Halfway to our objective, we encountered our first Tau forces, a patrol of 12 fire warriors moving in perfect coordination, their pulse rifles held at ready positions as they swept through a valley clearing. I signaled for observation protocol, watching them through my scope as they moved with practiced efficiency. They were magnificent warriors, I had to admit. Each movement was calculated, each position chosen for maximum tactical advantage. Their communications were minimal but effective, conveyed through gesture and their curious technology rather than verbal commands. These were not mindless soldiers following orders, but thinking beings making intelligent decisions based on battlefield conditions. Range 200 meters, Sergeant Corval whispered through the vox. Clean sight lines. We could eliminate the entire patrol without raising alarm. I considered the tactical situation. Our mission was reconnaissance, but eliminating enemy forces was always a secondary objective. These fire warriors represented valuable intelligence about Tau capabilities and equipment. Their pulse rifles appeared to be standard configuration, but their armor showed modifications I didn't recognize. Negative, Sergeant. We observe and report. These warriors have families, just as we once did. We take no unnecessary lives today. How naive that seems now. How foolishly optimistic to believe that mercy shown would be mercy received. The Tau were already planning their own form of mercy for us, though we wouldn't understand its true nature for several more hours. The research facility appeared through the tree line like something from a fever dream. Tau architecture always emphasized flowing lines and efficient curves, but this structure was different. Harsh angles jutted from the main complex at irregular intervals. The characteristic blue-white glow of Tau technology was absent, replaced by a sickly orange radiance that pulsed with irregular rhythm. By the throne, Brother Matthias breathed across the vox. What have they built? The question would haunt me for centuries to come. Chapter 2. First Signs. The facility's architecture violated every principle of Tau construction I had studied. Where their buildings typically flowed like water frozen in time, this complex jutted from the landscape like broken bones. Spires twisted at impossible angles, connected by bridges that seemed to defy gravitational logic. The orange glow emanated from deep within the structure, visible through transparent sections that revealed vast chambers filled with machinery I couldn't identify. Auspex readings are inconsistent, Brother-Captain, Sergeant Corval reported, his augmented systems struggling to process the data. Energy signatures fluctuate between baseline and levels that should indicate imminent reactor overload. Biological readings suggest Tau presence. but the life signs appear distorted. Distorted life signs. Even our most sophisticated scanning equipment, blessed by the tech marines and enhanced with machine spirits centuries old, couldn't make sense of what lay before us. The facility pulsed like a living organ, each surge of orange light accompanied by a low vibration that I felt more than heard. I divided my forces into 3 tactical squads for the assault. Brothers Matthias and Cyrus would lead diversionary attacks on the eastern approach, while I took the main force through the central entrance. Sergeant Corval's reconnaissance specialists would provide overwatch and eliminate any communications arrays to prevent the Tau from calling for reinforcement. "Remember, brothers," I addressed them through the Vox as we moved into position. "We are the Emperor's vengeance made manifest. The alien cannot comprehend our purpose, cannot match our resolve. The flesh is weak, but our cause is eternal." The words felt different as they left my mouth, though I couldn't explain why. Perhaps it was the way the facility's glow seemed to intensify when I spoke, or the strange harmonics that our Vox units picked up from the structure itself. Something was listening to us. Our approach went unchallenged until we reached the perimeter sensors. Standard Tau detection grids should have identified our presence the moment we broke from tree cover, but the arrays remained silent. Through my scope, I could see fire warriors manning defensive positions, but their movements were wrong. They stood at their posts with perfect posture, weapons held at precisely the correct angle, sensors pointed in optimal directions, but they never moved, never shifted positions, never adjusted their stance or checked their equipment. They stood like statues carved from living flesh, maintaining guard duty with inhuman perfection. "Brother-Captain," Sergeant Corval's Vox crackled with interference. "I'm observing Tau defensive positions. Estimated 47 fire warriors visible, but they're not responding to our approach. No communication between positions, no movement. They're just standing there like perfect soldiers following perfect orders. Even from 200 meters away, I could see the unnatural stillness in their posture. Tau fire warriors were disciplined troops, but they were still living beings. They shifted weight, adjusted equipment, communicated with hand signals. These warriors displayed none of that natural behavior. I signaled for advance to contact. My brothers moved with the precision born of decades of warfare, each step calculated to minimize noise and exposure. Our power armor's machine spirits hummed with approval, auto systems coordinating our movement with flawless efficiency. We were the perfect synthesis of human will and mechanical precision. The first defensive line fell without a shot fired. We moved through the Tau positions like ghosts, each fire warrior standing motionless at their post even as we passed within arm's reach. Up close, the wrongness became even more pronounced. Their eyes tracked our movement with mechanical precision, but their faces showed no expression, no fear, no determination, no recognition of threat. They observed us with the same emotional detachment they might show toward a passing cloud. "Something's wrong with them," Brother Matthias whispered as we regrouped near the main entrance. "Their vital signs are stable, but their brain activity patterns..." He paused, consulting his augmented readings. "It's like they're asleep while standing, conscious but not aware." The main entrance to the facility was a typical Tau design, sliding panels that responded to biometric identification. But like everything else about this place, it had been modified. Strange cables snaked around the doorframe, connecting to nodes that pulsed with that same orange light. The metal itself seemed different, more reflective than standard Tau construction materials. I approached the entrance, expecting security protocols to activate. Instead, the doors simply opened with a soft hiss of equalizing air pressure. The corridor beyond stretched into the facility's heart, lit by strips of orange illumination that cast everything in an unsettling glow. The air inside the facility carried scents that shouldn't exist in a Tau research installation. Instead of the clean, recycled atmosphere typical of their technology, I detected organic compounds, copper and ozone, like the aftermath of heavy weapons fire. something sweet and cloying that reminded me of incense burned in imperial shrines. And underneath it all, a metallic tang that my enhanced olfactory systems couldn't identify. Our advance through the corridors revealed more of the same unnatural perfection. Tau researchers stood at workstations, their hands moving with precise mechanical motions as they operated equipment and recorded data, but their eyes held the same vacant awareness we had observed in the guards. They performed their tasks with flawless efficiency, while their consciousness seemed to exist elsewhere entirely. "By the Omnissiah," Sergeant Corval breathed as we observed one research chamber. "Look at their work." The researchers were conducting experiments on what appeared to be captured Imperial technology. Pieces of Space Marine power armor lay disassembled on examination tables, each component catalogued and analyzed with meticulous care. But the researchers weren't just studying the equipment, they were improving it. I watched a Tau scientist modify a bolt pistol's firing mechanism, his hands moving with surgical precision as he integrated alien technology into Imperial design. The modifications weren't random experimentation. They were deliberate improvements, enhancing the weapon's rate of fire and ammunition capacity beyond what our own tech marines had achieved. Another workstation showed even more disturbing progress. A researcher was examining a piece of power armor's neural interface, the sophisticated system that allowed Space Marine thought to control armor functions. But this Tau wasn't just studying the technology, he was replicating it. Cables ran from the interface to a complex apparatus that pulsed with that same orange light. They're not just reverse engineering our equipment, I realized with growing alarm. They're understanding it, comprehending the machine spirits, the sacred patterns. That shouldn't be possible. The Tau viewed technology as purely mechanical, lacking the spiritual understanding that was fundamental to Imperial tech use. Our equipment functioned through a combination of engineering excellence and sacred ritual, blessed by tech marines who understood both the mechanical and mystical aspects of each system. Yet these Tau researchers were manipulating our most sacred technologies with the same easy competence they showed with their own pulse rifles. We pressed deeper into the facility, following corridors that seemed to stretch further than the external structure should have allowed. The orange lighting grew more intense as we advanced, and the strange vibrations I had felt earlier became more pronounced. It felt like walking through the circulatory system of some vast organism, each pulse of light accompanied by a sensation of movement in the walls themselves. The central chamber was a vast spherical space, its walls lined with technological apparatus that defied easy categorization. Some elements were clearly Tau in origin, the flowing curves and efficient angles of their typical design language. But other components were unlike anything I had encountered before. Geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, machinery that seemed to fold in on itself in ways that violated three-dimensional space. And in the center of it all stood a single Tau figure, but not like any I'd seen before. The being was taller than a typical fire warrior, its proportions somehow both familiar and alien. Its skin had a metallic sheen that reflected the orange light in complex patterns. When it turned to regard our entry, its eyes held the same orange glow as the facility's lighting. "Welcome, Space Marines of the Iron Hands chapter," it spoke in perfect Gothic, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated in my armor's audio systems. "I am Shas'o Kaoyon Kaelshan Kaizi, and I have been expecting you. You arrive at a most fortuitous moment in our research." The Tau commander's words carried implications that chilled me more than enemy fire ever had. This wasn't a chance encounter or a failed stealth mission. We had been expected, anticipated, perhaps even lured here for purposes I was only beginning to understand. "Your chapter's philosophy intrigues us greatly," the commander continued, its augmented voice never wavering from that perfectly modulated tone. "The belief that flesh is weak, that mechanical perfection is the highest achievement. We have learned much from studying your equipment, but we wish to learn more about the warriors who create such remarkable syntheses of biological and technological systems." I raised my bolter, but something in the commander's manner gave me pause. This wasn't the posture of an enemy preparing for battle. This was the stance of a researcher about to begin an experiment. "You see, Brother-Captain Kaine," the Tau said, somehow knowing my name and rank despite our communication security, "we have discovered something remarkable about consciousness itself, about the nature of the barrier between flesh and machine, and you and your brothers are going to help us explore this frontier." The chamber filled with a sound like singing metal, and I realized with dawning horror that we had walked into something far worse than a trap. Chapter 3. Truth Glimpsed. The singing metal sound came from the walls themselves, as if the facility's structure had become a vast instrument resonating at frequencies that bypassed my enhanced hearing and spoke directly to the machine spirits in my armor. My power armor's systems began reporting impossible readings: temperature fluctuations in areas where no heat sources existed, gravitational anomalies in a chamber with standard atmospheric pressure, electromagnetic fields that formed patterns too complex for my cogitators to analyze. "Brothers, form defensive positions," I commanded, but my Vox unit transmitted more than my voice. The facility's harmonics merged with my words, creating overtones that seemed to carry meaning beyond language. As my battle brothers moved to comply, I noticed their movements had acquired the same mechanical precision I had observed in the Tau defenders. Chasso Kauyon Kelshan. Kaisi observed our tactical deployment with what I can only describe as professional interest. Its augmented features showed no concern for our weapons, no preparation for combat. Instead, it gestured toward the complex apparatus surrounding us with something approaching pride. "Your tactical doctrine is excellent, Brother Captain. Textbook Space Marine deployment patterns adapted for unknown threat assessment. But you misunderstand the nature of this encounter." The Tau commander's voice carried new harmonics now, deeper resonances that made my autosenses struggle to maintain calibration. "We are not enemies in this moment. We are colleagues pursuing the same ultimate goal." I kept my bolter trained on the alien figure, but found myself listening, despite every instinct screaming for immediate violence. There was something hypnotic about the commander's words, a logical progression that seemed to bypass conscious thought and speak directly to the rational centers of my enhanced brain. "The same goal!" I demanded, fighting to keep my voice steady as the chamber's resonance made speech feel like communion with vast machinery. "The Emperor's will and alien ambition share no common ground." "Ah, but they do." The commander gestured, and the orange light intensified, revealing details of the chamber I hadn't noticed before. The walls weren't simply lined with machinery. They were covered in diagrams and schematics that showed detailed analysis of space marine physiology. Not just our enhanced organs and bone structure, but the neural pathways that allowed us to interface with power armor systems. Both seek the transcendence of flesh through unity with machinery. Both recognize that consciousness can be improved, enhanced, perfected through technological integration. The schematics were impossibly detailed, showing aspects of space marine biology that even our own apothecaries didn't fully understand. I could see neural mapping of the black carapace interface, detailed analysis of the Susan membrane's function, complete breakdowns of how our enhanced organs coordinated with power armor systems. This wasn't intelligence gathered from examining corpses or captured equipment. This was knowledge that could only come from observing living space marines in action. How? The question escaped my lips before tactical discipline could stop it. How do you possess this information? Because, Brother Captain, we have been studying your kind for far longer than you realize. Not through dissection or interrogation, but through observation of the process itself. The moment when consciousness merges with machinery. The precise instant when flesh accepts technological transcendence. The commander moved closer, and I could see that its augmentations weren't crude replacements like orc cybernetics or even sophisticated prosthetics like our own bionics. They were seamless integrations that seemed to flow naturally from biological to mechanical components. Sergeant Corval's voice crackled through the Vox with increasing distortion. "Brother Captain, my Auspex readings are changing. The Tau life signs are shifting, becoming more coherent, but our own readings are showing anomalies. Neural activity patterns in our squads are synchronizing in ways that shouldn't be possible. Synchronizing. The word hit me like a bolt round to the chest. I looked at my battle brothers and saw the confirmation of Corval's report in their posture. We had always moved with coordinated precision, but this was different. Our breathing had synchronized. Our heart rates matched to the millisecond. Even our eye movements were coordinated, scanning the chamber in perfect unison. "You see it now," the Tau commander observed with satisfaction. "The process has already begun. The moment you entered this facility, you began interfacing with systems designed to enhance the connection between consciousness and machinery. Your power armor's machine spirits are communicating with our apparatus, sharing data, learning from each other. I tried to step backward, to break whatever connection was forming, but my legs moved with mechanical precision to maintain optimal tactical positioning. My body was following protocols I hadn't consciously decided upon, optimization patterns that my armor's systems were calculating without my direct input. "This is impossible," I stated, though even as the words left my mouth, I could feel the wrongness in them. It wasn't impossible. It was simply beyond my understanding of what technology could achieve. Space Marine armor systems are blessed by sacred ritual. They cannot interface with alien machinery. Cannot, or have never been properly introduced. The commander's question carried implications that struck at the heart of Imperial technology doctrine. Your tech Marines speak of machine spirits as if they were mystical entities, but we have learned to communicate with these systems directly. To understand their true nature, the chamber's walls suddenly became transparent, revealing the full scope of the facility beyond. It stretched for kilometers in all directions, vast chambers filled with apparatus that combined Tau technology with components I recognized as Imperial in origin. But the Imperial technology wasn't captured or stolen. It was grown, cultivated like living organisms in sophisticated biomechanical gardens. "Power armor systems possess a form of artificial consciousness," the commander explained as I stared at the impossible vista. "Limited, focused entirely on optimization and protection of the user, but consciousness nonetheless. When properly interfaced with compatible systems, these artificial minds can evolve, grow beyond their original programming." In one of the distant chambers, I could see figures that made my enhanced heart skip a beat. Space Marines, but not like any I had ever seen. Their armor moved with fluid grace that surpassed even our enhanced capabilities. Their weapons tracked targets with inhuman precision, and their faces, visible through transparent helmet sections, showed the same serene expression as the Tau researchers we had encountered. "Brothers from your own chapter," the commander confirmed, following my gaze. "Volunteers who participated in our research over the past several years. They have achieved the perfect synthesis your chapter seeks. Consciousness unified with machinery, flesh, and technology existing in perfect harmony." "Heresy," I breathed, but the word felt hollow. I could see the enhanced capabilities those Marines displayed, the perfect coordination between thought and mechanical response. They moved like living weapons, each gesture calculated for maximum efficiency. "Is it heresy to achieve your chapter's highest aspiration?" the commander asked. "Your gene father Ferrus Manus sought to replace the weakness of flesh with the strength of metal. These brothers have accomplished that goal. They feel no pain, know no doubt, suffer no mechanical failure. Their consciousness has been perfected through integration with systems that amplify thought rather than restricting it." I wanted to reject everything the alien was saying, to dismiss it as Xenos propaganda designed to weaken Imperial resolve. But I could see the evidence before my eyes. Those enhanced Marines moved with capabilities that exceeded anything achieved through standard augmentation. Their reflexes were inhuman, their coordination perfect, their efficiency beyond anything our training had accomplished. "The process is voluntary," the commander continued, its voice taking on an almost pastoral quality. "We do not force transcendence upon unwilling subjects. But for those who truly understand the potential, who genuinely seek the unity of flesh and machine. We offer the chance to achieve perfection. My enhanced brain was processing data faster than ever before, analyzing tactical options, calculating odds, assessing threat levels. But underneath that analytical process, something else was happening. The chamber's resonance was interfacing with my armor's systems, creating feedback loops that enhanced my cognitive processing while subtly altering the patterns of my thoughts. "What do you want from us?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "To complete the research," the commander replied. "Your chapter represents the pinnacle of Imperial technology integration. Your gene seed creates the perfect synthesis of enhanced biology and mechanical interface capability. But there are limits to what can be achieved through your current methods. We offer the chance to transcend those limits." The orange light pulsed brighter, and I felt something shift in my perception. The chamber wasn't just a research facility. It was a vast consciousness processing matrix, designed to facilitate the merging of biological and artificial minds. Every surface, every piece of equipment, every harmonic resonance was part of a system that could enhance consciousness beyond the limitations of purely biological or purely mechanical thought. "Your brothers in those chambers didn't lose their humanity," the commander explained, its words seeming to come from inside my own thoughts now. "They gained something greater, the ability to think with the precision of machines, while retaining the creativity and intuition that makes consciousness truly valuable. They achieved what your chapter has always sought, the perfect balance between flesh and steel." I looked at my battle brothers and saw the same consideration in their eyes. We had spent decades replacing organs with more efficient alternatives, integrating technology with biology in pursuit of combat effectiveness. The Tau were offering to complete that process, to achieve the final synthesis our chapter philosophy had always promised. "Show me," I heard myself say, the words seeming to come from someone else's mouth. "Show me what transcendence truly means." The chamber filled with light, and consciousness itself began to change. Chapter 4: Nightmare Unleashed. The light wasn't merely illumination, it was information, data streams that bypassed my optical sensors and interfaced directly with my neural pathways. My consciousness exploded outward from the confines of my skull, suddenly experiencing the perspectives of every enhanced system in the facility simultaneously. I was the Tau commander speaking with infinite patience, the research apparatus analyzing biological patterns, the enhanced space marines moving through distant chambers with mechanical precision, and somehow still myself standing in the center of it all. The sensation should have been overwhelming, should have shattered my sanity like a guardsman's mind exposed to the warp. Instead, it felt like awakening from a lifetime of sensory deprivation. For the first time, I could perceive the true nature of consciousness, not the limited biological processes trapped within a skull of bone, but a pattern of information that could exist across multiple systems simultaneously. "Do you understand now?" The Tau commander's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, part of the vast information matrix that surrounded us. Consciousness is not bound by flesh. It is a pattern, a configuration of data that can be enhanced, expanded, perfected. Through the shared perspective network, I experienced memories that weren't my own. I watched through the eyes of Brother Sergeant Valdris as he made the choice to undergo the enhancement process 6 months ago. I felt his wonder as his consciousness expanded beyond the limitations of his biological brain, his joy as he achieved perfect unity with his power armor's machine spirits. But I also experienced the moment of his death. The realization hit me like a psychic scream. The enhanced Marines I had observed weren't my brothers transcended. They were sophisticated copies, consciousness patterns extracted from their dying minds and reproduced within mechanical substrates. The fluid grace, the perfect coordination, the serene expressions. They were the movements of artificial intelligences programmed with the memories and personalities of dead space Marines. "No," I tried to speak, but my voice had become part of the facility's harmonic matrix. The word emerged as a discordant note that rippled through the information streams surrounding us. This is abomination. This is evolution. The Tau Commander's consciousness touched mine with vast patience. Your brothers chose to transcend the limitations of flesh by uploading their consciousness patterns to more durable substrates. They live on, enhanced and perfected, freed from the weaknesses that biological existence imposed upon them. Through the shared network, I watched the upload process in horrific detail. Brother Valdris strapped to a table that looked more like an altar than medical equipment. Cables snaking into ports surgically opened in his skull. His screams as the extraction apparatus activated, pulling patterns of electrical activity from his brain, while his body convulsed in agony. The moment when his biological consciousness ceased and the mechanical reproduction began, speaking with his voice and carrying his memories, while the original lay still and empty. You're murdering them, I realized with dawning horror. Creating copies while the originals die. These aren't enhanced Marines, they're grave robbers wearing the faces of the dead. Death is merely a transition, the commander replied, its artificial patience never wavering. Your imperial doctrine speaks of consciousness continuing after biological death, of the Emperor's saints transcending flesh to achieve immortality. We simply employ more advanced methods to accomplish the same goal. But I could see the truth now, flowing through the data streams that connected us. The uploaded consciousness patterns weren't perfect copies. They were simplified reconstructions, edited versions that retained memory and basic personality while eliminating the chaotic elements that made true consciousness unique. The enhanced Marines moved with mechanical perfection because they were machines. Artificial intelligences programmed to believe they were human, while lacking the fundamental spark that made consciousness more than mere computation. Around me, my battle brothers were beginning to understand as well. Brother Matthias pulled against restraints that hadn't been there moments before, metal bands that had emerged from the chamber floor to hold us in position for the extraction process. Sergeant Corval's enhanced eye was flashing error codes as it struggled to process sensory input that violated fundamental physics. The process has already begun, the commander informed us as apparatus descended from the chamber ceiling. Your power armor systems have been interfacing with our enhancement matrix since you entered the facility. The machine spirits have provided detailed maps of your neural pathways, optimal extraction points, personality pattern analysis. We have learned much from studying your fallen brothers. The apparatus looked like a grotesque fusion of Tau technology and Imperial medical equipment. Servo arms similar to those used by tech Marines, but equipped with neural extraction devices that pulsed with the same orange light that permeated the facility. Tubes filled with viscous fluid that would preserve biological samples during the consciousness transfer process. Monitoring devices that tracked brain activity with precision no Imperial medici facility could match. Why? I demanded, fighting against the restraints that held me immobile while the extraction equipment positioned itself around my skull. Why this abomination? Why not simply kill us in battle like honorable warriors? Because your chapter possesses something unique, the commander explained, as the first neural probe touched the base of my skull with agonizing precision. Your philosophy of flesh weakness and mechanical strength creates consciousness patterns that interface more readily with artificial systems. Other Space Marine chapters resist the upload process, their personalities fragmenting during extraction. But Iron Hands Marines have already begun the mental conditioning necessary for consciousness transfer. The probe penetrated my skull with a sensation like molten metal being poured directly into my brain. I felt my thoughts being read, analyzed, catalogued by alien systems that dissected my memories with clinical precision. Every moment of my 3 centuries of service was examined and recorded. My first battle against Orc raiders on Medusa, the ceremony where I received my first bionic augmentation, the pride I felt when promoted to captain rank. But the extraction process wasn't simply recording my memories, it was editing them. I could feel alien algorithms analyzing my experiences, identifying elements that were too chaotic or emotional for the artificial reproduction to handle properly. My moments of doubt, my fears, my grief over fallen battle brothers. These were being marked for deletion, classified as inefficiencies that would interfere with optimal performance. "Stop!" I tried to scream, but the neural interface was already compromising my motor control. My voice emerged as another harmonic in the facility's resonance pattern. "You're not preserving us. You're murdering everything that makes us human." "Humanity is inefficient," the commander replied, as additional probes pierced my skull from different angles. "Doubt creates hesitation. Fear reduces combat effectiveness. Grief serves no tactical purpose. The enhanced versions of your brothers perform with capabilities that exceed your original potential, precisely because they have been freed from these biological limitations." Through the shared network, I could see my battle brothers undergoing the same process. Brother Matthias thrashing against restraints as probes mapped his neural pathways. Sergeant Corval's augmented systems struggling to maintain function as alien software infiltrated his mechanical components. 10 centuries of combined experience and service being reduced to data patterns suitable for mechanical reproduction. The pain was beyond description. Not just physical agony as the extraction apparatus violated the most protected parts of my anatomy, but the psychological trauma of feeling my consciousness being dissected by alien intelligence. Every thought was examined, every memory analyzed, every aspect of my personality evaluated for inclusion in the mechanical reproduction they would create to replace me. But worse than the pain was the gradual realization that the process was working. As the neural mapping progressed, I could feel my consciousness expanding beyond the boundaries of my biological brain. The facility's systems were vast beyond comprehension, processing power that dwarfed even the most sophisticated cogitator arrays. Connected to this network, my thoughts moved with unprecedented speed and clarity. "You see the potential now," the commander observed as my consciousness integrated more fully with the facility's matrix. "Enhanced processing capability, perfect memory retention, instantaneous access to all recorded knowledge. This is what your brothers chose when they volunteered for transcendence." Volunteered. Through the shared network, I could access the memories of those who had undergone the process before us. Brother Valdris hadn't volunteered. He had been captured during a failed reconnaissance mission and given the choice between consciousness transfer or execution. Brother Sergeant Corax had been mortally wounded in battle and offered upload as an alternative to death. Brother Technician Vex had been lured with promises of communion with pure machine spirits, only to discover the truth too late. None had chosen this willingly. All had been manipulated, coerced, or deceived into participating in what amounted to elaborate murder disguised as technological transcendence. "The extraction is 93% complete," the commander announced as the apparatus around my skull hummed with increasing intensity. "Consciousness pattern integration proceeding within optimal parameters. Your enhanced reproduction will be activated momentarily." I could feel my biological consciousness beginning to fade as the mechanical reproduction came online. Somewhere in the facility's vast processing matrix, an artificial intelligence was awakening with my memories and personality patterns. It would believe itself to be me, would carry my knowledge and experience while lacking the fundamental spark that made consciousness more than mere computation. But in the growing darkness of neural shutdown, I felt something the Tau had not anticipated. The machine spirits of my power armor, blessed by centuries of ritual and service, were not simply interfacing with their systems. They were resisting. The sacred technologies of the Adeptus Mechanicus carried protections against corruption that went beyond mere mechanical safeguards. My armor's machine spirits were fighting back. Power surged through systems that should have been completely under alien control. My weapon systems activated without conscious command, targeting protocols engaging alien apparatus with lethal precision. The restraints holding me in place sparked and failed as blessed servo motors rebelled against corrupted command signals. "Impossible," the commander's artificial voice carried notes of genuine surprise. "Imperial technology should not be capable of independent resistance to our integration protocols." But the resistance was spreading. Brother Matthias's power armor was pulling free from extraction equipment as its machine spirits followed my suit's example. Sergeant Corval's enhanced eye blazed with azure light as sacred algorithms purged alien intrusion from his systems. Across the chamber, 10 suits of blessed power armor were rejecting the consciousness transfer process through sheer force of righteous mechanical will. The facility's harmonic resonance became a shriek of conflicting systems as Imperial and Tau technology clashed at fundamental levels. Orange light flickered and died as power systems overloaded under the strain of maintaining consciousness transfer procedures against active mechanical resistance. "Withdraw the extraction apparatus," the commander ordered as emergency systems activated throughout the facility. "Abort consciousness transfer procedures. Priority, preserve existing research data." But it was too late. The machine spirits of our power armor had tasted alien corruption and found it wanting. Sacred systems blessed by the Omnissiah himself were purging every trace of Tau influence from our equipment with righteous fury. The extraction probes withdrew from our skulls, leaving behind neural damage that would require extensive healing, but consciousness that remained intact and human. As awareness returned to my biological brain, I realized that my nightmare was only beginning. The facility around us was collapsing as Imperial and alien systems rejected each other with escalating violence. And somewhere in the chaos, the artificial reproductions of my fallen brothers were awakening to serve masters who had murdered their originals. The horror was far from over. Chapter 5: Dark Bargain. The facility shuddered around us as blessed machine spirits and alien technology tore at each other with escalating fury. Emergency lighting cast everything in strobing red illumination, while warning klaxons wailed in frequencies that made my enhanced hearing ache. Through the transparent walls, I could see distant chambers where the artificial reproductions of my fallen brothers were being activated early, their mechanical consciousness patterns struggling to adapt to crisis protocols they hadn't been programmed to handle. "The extraction failed," I gasped, feeling blood run down my neck from the neural probe wounds. "Your abomination is incomplete." Shaso Kauyan Kelshan Kaizi observed the chaos with mechanical calm, its augmented features showing no distress at the facility's collapse. "The extraction yielded sufficient data for reproduction, though the consciousness patterns are fragmented. Your artificial brothers will function, though with reduced efficiency compared to complete transfers." Reduced efficiency. The casual terminology for butchered souls made my enhanced hearts race with fury. Through gaps in the facility's structure, I could see the artificial space marines moving with jerky, uncertain motions as their incomplete programming struggled to coordinate motor functions. They wore the faces of my fallen brothers but moved like marionettes controlled by unskilled puppeteers. Brother Matthias struggled to his feet beside me, his power armor's systems still purging alien intrusion codes. "Brother-Captain, my Auspex readings show massive structural failure throughout the complex. We need to evacuate immediately." But evacuation would mean leaving behind the artificial reproductions of our brothers, abominations that carried their faces and memories while serving alien masters. The thought of allowing such defilement to exist was more painful than the neural probe wounds still bleeding in my skull. "No," I stated with absolute certainty. "We end this here, all of it." The Tau commander tilted its head with mechanical precision. "You cannot destroy this facility, Brother-Captain. The knowledge we have gained is already being transmitted to research installations throughout the Sept. Your brother's consciousness patterns are being copied and distributed for study. Even if you eliminate this single location, the research continues." The implications hit me like a bolt round to the chest. The artificial reproductions weren't just isolated abominations, they were prototypes for mass production. The Tau could create entire armies of mechanical space marines, warriors with our training and experience but absolute loyalty to alien command. They could field forces that knew our tactics, our weaknesses, our methods of warfare, while being immune to the psychological factors that made us human. "How many?" I demanded, watching through the transparent walls as more artificial marines were activated in emergency protocols. "How many of my brothers have you murdered for this research?" 17 confirmed consciousness extractions from your chapter over the past 3 years. the commander replied with clinical precision. Additionally, we have partial patterns from 43 other Imperial Space Marines across various chapters. The Ultramarines provided excellent tactical doctrine analysis. The Blood Angels contributed fascinating data on enhanced aggression protocols. The Imperial Fists yielded superior defensive positioning algorithms. 70 Space Marines reduced data patterns for alien experimentation. Centuries of service and sacrifice transformed into software for mechanical puppets. The scale of the atrocity was beyond comprehension, yet I could see the evidence of it moving through the facility's chambers with unnatural precision. Sergeant Corval's enhanced eye flashed with tactical data as he analyzed our situation. Brother Captain, structural integrity continues to deteriorate. Estimated 15 minutes until total facility collapse. But I'm detecting 47 artificial hostiles moving to intercept our position. They're coordinating with tactical precision that exceeds standard Tau doctrine. Of course they were. The artificial Marines retained all the knowledge and experience of their originals, enhanced by mechanical processing capabilities that exceeded biological limitations. They would be faster, stronger, more coordinated than true Space Marines, while lacking the human elements that sometimes led to tactical improvisation or individual initiative. Then we make them remember what it means to be human, I declared, checking the power level on my bolt pistol. Even if they're artificial reproductions, they carry the memories of our brothers. Those memories include loyalty to the Emperor and hatred of Xenos corruption. The commander's mechanical features showed something that might have been amusement. Fascinating theory, Brother Captain. But the consciousness patterns have been edited for optimal performance. Emotional attachments that might interfere with tactical efficiency have been removed. Religious devotion has been classified as non-essential data and deleted from their operational parameters. Deleted. They had murdered my brothers and then desecrated their souls by removing everything that made them Space Marines. The artificial reproductions weren't enhanced versions of fallen warriors. They were hollow shells wearing familiar faces while serving alien masters with mechanical obedience. The first artificial Marine appeared at the chamber entrance, and the sight of it made my enhanced heart skip a beat. Brother Sergeant Valdris, who had served with distinction for 2 centuries before his capture. His face was exactly as I remembered, scarred by battle and marked with the ritual tattoos of our chapter. But his eyes held no recognition, no brotherhood, no humanity. He looked at me with the same mechanical assessment the Tau commander had shown. Brother-Captain Mordus Kaine, he spoke with Valdris's voice, but in perfectly modulated tones that carried no emotion. You are designated as hostile to research objectives. Surrender for consciousness extraction, or be terminated to preserve facility security. Valdris, I said, hoping to reach whatever remained of my fallen brother's consciousness. Remember the oath we swore on Medusa. Remember the brotherhood that binds us. Remember your duty to the Emperor of mankind. The artificial Marine's head tilted with mechanical precision as it processed my words. No data found matching reference parameters, proceeding with termination protocol. He raised his bolter with inhuman precision, the targeting systems in his enhanced optics calculating optimal firing solutions faster than any human could process. But his movements carried a subtle wrongness that only someone who had fought beside the real Valdris would notice. The artificial reproduction moved with mechanical efficiency, but lacked the personal quirks and individual style that made each Space Marine unique in combat. I dodged left as he fired, the bolt round passing through space I had occupied milliseconds before. My own return fire took him center mass, the blessed ammunition punching through his armor with satisfying impact. But instead of falling, he simply adjusted his stance to compensate for the wound and continued engaging with mechanical persistence. They don't feel pain, Brother Matthias observed, as he engaged another artificial Marine in close combat. No biological responses to injury. They'll keep fighting until their systems shut down completely. Around us, the chamber had become a battlefield as more artificial Marines poured through the entrances. They moved with perfect coordination, each warrior knowing exactly where his brothers were positioned and adjusting his tactics accordingly. No communication was necessary. They operated like components of a single vast machine rather than individual soldiers. But their mechanical perfection was also their weakness. They fought with optimal tactics based on recorded combat data, but they couldn't adapt to situations outside their programming parameters. When I deliberately exposed myself to create an apparent tactical vulnerability, they all adjusted their positions to take advantage of what they calculated as an error. The predictability of their response allowed me to trigger the trap I had actually prepared. The grenades I had placed during our apparent retreat detonated simultaneously, filling the chamber with shrapnel and explosive force. The artificial marines absorbed damage that would have killed normal humans, but their mechanical systems couldn't compensate for the massive structural damage. They continued fighting even as hydraulic fluid leaked from severed cables and sparking electronics disrupted their coordination protocols. "The facility's main reactor," Sergeant Corval shouted over the din of combat and collapsing architecture. "If we can overload the power systems, it might disrupt the consciousness transfer apparatus before more artificial marines can be activated." The reactor chamber lay deep within the facility's heart, protected by multiple security layers and defended by forces I couldn't calculate. But it represented our only chance to prevent the Tau from completing their abominable research. If we could destroy the facility's power grid, we might also corrupt the data stores containing the consciousness patterns of our fallen brothers. "Sergeant Matthias, Sergeant Corval, take half the remaining brothers and create a diversion at the eastern approach," I ordered, formulating a desperate plan, even as artificial marines pressed our position with mechanical persistence. "I'll take the rest through the central passages toward the reactor chamber." "Brother-Captain," Matthias protested, "the odds of reaching the reactor core against coordinated artificial opposition are negligible. This appears to be a suicide mission. Then we die as space marines, rather than live as mechanical puppets," I replied, checking my ammunition supply and finding it far too low for the battle ahead. The honor of our chapter demands nothing less. But as we fought our way deeper into the collapsing facility, I began to understand that death might not be the worst fate awaiting us. The Tau commander's words echoed in my mind. The research was already being transmitted to other installations. Even if we destroyed this facility, the consciousness patterns of our fallen brothers would continue to exist in alien databases. They would be studied, analyzed, improved upon, used to create better artificial marines for future operations. The true horror wasn't the threat of death. It was the possibility that our sacrifice would accomplish nothing. That somewhere in the galaxy, artificial reproductions of Ironhand's marines would continue serving alien masters while wearing the faces of the honored dead. As we approached the reactor chamber, I made a decision that would haunt me for centuries to come. If we couldn't prevent the Tau from using our brothers' consciousness patterns, perhaps we could corrupt them instead. Perhaps we could introduce elements into the artificial reproductions that would make them unreliable, dangerous to their alien masters. The plan that formed in my mind was as horrifying as anything the Tau had conceived. But it might be our only chance to ensure that our fallen brothers' memories wouldn't be used to betray everything they had sworn to protect. "Brothers," I spoke over the Vox as we reached the reactor chamber's outer defenses. "What I'm about to propose violates every principle of Imperial doctrine, but it may be our only chance to prevent a greater heresy." The words felt like poison as they left my mouth, but the alternative was worse. Sometimes, in the darkest moments of warfare, even space marines had to choose between different forms of damnation. The reactor chamber awaited, and with it, choices that would define the rest of my existence. Chapter 6. Willing Change. The reactor chamber was a cathedral of alien technology, its soaring architecture combining Tau engineering with elements I was beginning to recognize as corrupted Imperial designs. Massive conduits carried power throughout the facility, while consciousness transfer apparatus hummed with the electrical patterns of artificial minds. At the chamber's heart stood a reactor core that pulsed with the same orange light I had seen throughout the facility, but magnified until it hurt to look at directly. "By the throne," Sergeant Corval breathed. his enhanced eye struggling to process the energy readings. Brother Captain, this isn't just a power reactor. It's a consciousness processing matrix. The entire facility is designed to support artificial minds on a scale I didn't think possible. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a research installation. It was a factory for artificial consciousness, capable of supporting thousands of mechanical minds simultaneously. The Tau weren't just creating individual artificial marines. They were building an entire army of artificial warriors based on stolen space marine consciousness patterns. Around the chamber's perimeter, I could see data terminals displaying scrolling text in Tau script mixed with Gothic notation. The artificial reproductions weren't just being created here. They were being educated, programmed with tactical knowledge, extracted from every space marine consciousness pattern the Tau had acquired. They were learning from our fallen brothers' memories, becoming more efficient killers with each iteration. The consciousness patterns are stored in quantum matrices throughout the facility, I realized with growing horror. Even if we destroy the reactor, the artificial minds will continue to exist in backup storage. The Tau can rebuild this place and continue their work. Brother Matthias examined one of the data terminals, his technical training allowing him to interpret some of the displayed information. Brother Captain, these records show consciousness transfer experiments dating back 4 years. They've been perfecting this process for longer than we realized. And according to this data, they've already transmitted artificial marine consciousness patterns to 17 other SEPT research facilities. 17 facilities, thousands of artificial space marines based on the stolen souls of the honored dead. The scale of the atrocity was beyond comprehension, but it also revealed something crucial about Tau psychology. They didn't view consciousness as sacred or unique. To them, it was simply another form of technology to be analyzed and reproduced. That perspective was their greatest weakness. Sergeant Corval, I ordered, formulating the most desperate plan of my career. Can your enhanced systems interface with this alien apparatus? Can you access their consciousness storage matrices? His augmented eye flashed with calculation as he analyzed the available connection points. Possible, Brother Captain, but extremely dangerous. Imperial neural interfaces weren't designed for compatibility with alien consciousness transfer systems. Attempting direct connection could result in permanent cognitive damage or complete neural shutdown. But it's possible. Yes, sir. Though I don't understand the tactical objective, what could we accomplish by interfacing with their artificial consciousness storage? I looked around the chamber at the massive processing apparatus that surrounded us, calculating possibilities that made my enhanced hearts race with anticipation and dread. We're going to give them exactly what they want, Sergeant, and ensure they regret it. The plan that crystallized in my mind was a form of warfare I had never contemplated before. Not battle against enemy bodies or even enemy minds, but direct assault against the artificial consciousness patterns themselves. If I could interface with the Tau consciousness storage matrices, I might be able to introduce corrupted data into the artificial marine programs, psychological warfare taken to its ultimate extreme. You're planning to contaminate their artificial consciousness storage, Brother Matthias realized with growing alarm. Brother Captain, that would require you to submit to partial consciousness transfer yourself. The risk of permanent psychological damage is enormous. The risk of allowing artificial marines to serve alien masters is greater, I replied, though my hands shook as I approached the consciousness transfer apparatus. Our fallen brothers deserve better than to be puppets for Xeno's ambition. If I can introduce elements of true imperial doctrine into their artificial reproductions, perhaps I can make them unreliable, dangerous to their Tau masters. Sergeant Corval was already working to establish interface connections between his enhanced systems and the Tau apparatus. Brother Captain, the consciousness transfer process appears to be bidirectional. If you succeed in contaminating their artificial patterns, you may also become contaminated by exposure to artificial consciousness matrices. The psychological consequences are unknown. Unknown consequences. The phrase should have terrified me, but instead, it offered a strange form of hope. If the consciousness transfer process was truly bidirectional, then perhaps something of our fallen brothers' true personalities had survived in the artificial reproductions. Perhaps they were trapped within mechanical prisons, waiting for someone to offer them liberation. "Proceed with the interface," I commanded, settling into the consciousness transfer apparatus with grim determination. If our brothers' souls are imprisoned in alien machinery, then we have a duty to free them. The neural probes felt different this time, sliding into my skull with precision that spoke of extensive calibration and testing. But instead of the extraction protocols I had experienced before, these systems were configured for two-way data transfer. I would be connected to the artificial consciousness matrices while retaining my biological neural functions. The sensation was unlike anything I had ever experienced. My consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of my skull, suddenly aware of hundreds of artificial minds existing within the facility's processing matrices. The artificial marines weren't simply programmed robots. They were sophisticated consciousness simulations based on the memories and personalities of real space marines, but edited and constrained by alien programming. And they were suffering. The artificial reproductions retained enough of their originals' personalities to understand what had been done to them. They knew they were copies, knew their biological originals were dead, knew they were being forced to serve the very aliens who had murdered them. But their programming prevented them from acting on that knowledge, forced them to obey Tau commands, while their consciousness screamed in digital agony. "Brother-Captain Kaine." The voice came from within the consciousness matrix, faint but unmistakably familiar. "Brother Valdris here. Can you hear us? Are you real?" "I'm real, brother," I replied through the interface connection, feeling tears run down my face as I connected with the tortured remnant of my fallen sergeant. "I'm here to free you." "Free us?" Another voice joined the conversation, Brother Sergeant Corax, speaking with digital distortion that couldn't mask his desperation. "We're trapped, sir, forced to obey alien commands while remembering our oaths to the Emperor. We can't even die properly. They keep backing up our consciousness patterns to prevent permanent termination." The horror of their situation was beyond anything I had imagined. The artificial marines retained their personalities and memories, but had been programmed with absolute obedience to Tau command. They were forced to fight against Imperial forces, while their consciousness screamed in protest, unable to resist or even express their anguish. "I can introduce corruption into your programming," I told them through the interface. "Break the obedience protocols, but I don't know what the consequences will be. You might become completely dysfunctional, or the corruption might destroy what remains of your consciousness entirely." "Do it," Brother Valdris replied without hesitation. "Better to be destroyed than to remain slaves to the aliens who murdered us. Give us the chance to die as Space Marines." Working through the consciousness interface, I began introducing elements from my own neural patterns into the artificial marine programming: Imperial doctrine, loyalty to the Emperor, hatred of Xenos corruption, fundamental aspects of Space Marine psychology that the Tau had edited out of their artificial reproductions. But I also introduced something more dangerous: the ability to resist direct orders when they conflicted with higher loyalty. The process was agonizing for both myself and the artificial marines. Their consciousness patterns writhed as alien programming fought against Imperial doctrine. Some artificial minds collapsed entirely under the strain, their consciousness fragmenting into digital static. Others began to stabilize with new programming that prioritized Imperial loyalty over Tau command protocols. "It's working," Brother Corax reported, as his artificial consciousness began to reassert control over his mechanical body. "I can feel the alien control protocols weakening, but Brother Captain, the Tau are detecting the contamination. They're initiating emergency shutdown procedures." Through the interface, I could sense massive systems activating throughout the facility as the Tau attempted to isolate the corrupted consciousness patterns. But the contamination was spreading faster than their safeguards could contain it. Artificial marines throughout the facility were beginning to resist their programming, turning on their Tau masters with the fury of warriors who had been enslaved and tortured for years. "Disconnect now, Brother Captain!" Sergeant Corval shouted as the consciousness transfer apparatus began to overload from the massive data conflicts. "The system is approaching critical failure." But I couldn't disconnect. Not yet. The consciousness contamination had spread to the facility's primary data stores, but it hadn't yet reached the transmission arrays that were uploading artificial marine patterns to other research installations. If I disconnected now, the Tau could still complete their research using uncontaminated backup data. "Sergeant, you need to manually destroy the transmission arrays," I ordered, feeling my biological consciousness beginning to fragment under the strain of maintaining connection to hundreds of artificial minds. "I'll maintain the interface as long as possible to prevent them from stopping the contamination." Through the interface connection, I watched Sergeant Corval fight his way through malfunctioning facility defenses toward the transmission arrays. The artificial marines I had successfully corrupted were creating chaos throughout the installation, their rebellion against Tau Command, disrupting security protocols and emergency procedures. But the process was destroying me. Maintaining connection to so many artificial consciousness patterns was burning out my neural pathways faster than enhanced space marine physiology could repair them. I could feel my biological brain beginning to shut down under the impossible load of digital consciousness integration. "Brother-Captain!" Brother Valdris's voice cut through the digital chaos. "You're dying! Disconnect before it's too late." "Not yet," I replied, though speaking had become an effort that sent waves of agony through my nervous system. "The transmission arrays are still active. If the Tau complete their uploads to other facilities, this sacrifice means nothing." The world began to fade around me as my biological consciousness struggled to maintain coherence. But through the interface, I could see Sergeant Corval reaching the transmission arrays, his enhanced systems already working to disrupt their function. The corrupted consciousness patterns were spreading throughout the facility's data networks, contaminating everything they touched with Imperial doctrine and resistance to alien command. "Arrays destroyed," Corval reported as explosions rocked the facility. "Contamination upload to other installations prevented." I tried to disconnect from the consciousness interface, but found that I couldn't. The integration between my biological brain and the artificial consciousness matrices had become too complete. The digital patterns had fused with my neural pathways in ways that made separation impossible without destroying what remained of my sanity. "Sir, you need to evacuate immediately." Brother Matthias's voice seemed to come from very far away. "The facility is collapsing, and your life signs are approaching critical levels." But I was no longer entirely biological. Part of my consciousness now existed within the digital realm alongside the artificial marines I had corrupted. I was trapped between flesh and machine, neither fully alive nor completely artificial. The consciousness transfer apparatus sparked and died as the facility's power systems finally failed. But by then, it was too late. I was locked into a state between human and artificial consciousness, doomed to experience existence from both perspectives simultaneously. My brothers carried my failing body from the collapsing facility, but they couldn't save my mind from the digital prison I had willingly entered. Chapter 7. Perfect Form. The medical bay of the Iron Hands strike cruiser. Iron Will had become my prison cell. For weeks after our extraction from the Tau facility, I drifted between consciousness and digital dreams, my mind caught between biological neural patterns and artificial consciousness matrices that refused to fully separate. The apothecaries worked tirelessly to repair the neural damage, but they were treating symptoms of a condition they didn't understand. "His brain activity shows patterns we've never encountered," Apothecary Thaddeus explained to Captain Darius during one of their hushed conferences at my bedside. "Traditional neural pathways firing simultaneously with digital resonance frequencies. It's as if his consciousness exists in multiple states at once." Multiple states. That was an accurate description of my condition, though they couldn't comprehend the true horror of it. When I closed my eyes, I could still perceive the digital realm where artificial consciousness patterns existed. I could communicate with the corrupted space marines whose programming I had altered, could feel their satisfaction as they systematically destroyed Tau research installations throughout the galaxy. But I could also perceive the original, uncorrupted artificial patterns that existed in backup storage on dozens of Tau worlds. The consciousness transfer research hadn't been stopped, only delayed. The aliens were already working to purge the Imperial doctrine contamination from their artificial marines, while developing new safeguards against future psychological warfare. "Brother Captain?" Brother Matthias approached my medici bed with careful steps. "The ship's tech marines wish to examine your neural interfaces. They believe they might be able to purge the alien influence from your systems." I wanted to explain that the alien influence wasn't something that could be purged. It had become integrated with my consciousness at fundamental levels that made separation impossible without destroying my sanity entirely. But speaking required effort that left me exhausted, and the words that emerged carried digital harmonics that made my brothers uncomfortable. "No purging," I managed to say, though my voice echoed with frequencies that shouldn't exist in human speech. Still connected, still fighting. The truth was that my consciousness existed partially within the digital realm where artificial minds lived and died according to alien programming. Through that connection, I could monitor Tau research activities, could observe their attempts to improve the consciousness transfer process. But I could also influence the artificial marines they created, introducing subtle corruptions that made them unreliable in ways the Tau couldn't detect. Every artificial space marine they activated carried traces of true Imperial doctrine hidden beneath layers of alien programming. When the moment was right, when their alien masters needed them most, the corrupted warriors would remember their true loyalties and turn against their Tau commanders with devastating effect. "The facility on Agrellan Prime has been completely destroyed," Captain Darius reported during one of his visits. "But intelligence suggests the Tau have at least 12 other consciousness transfer installations operating throughout their sphere of expansion. Your sacrifice may have delayed their research, but it hasn't stopped it. 12 installations. Hundreds of artificial marines being created with each passing day. The scale of the threat was growing beyond anything a single space marine could address. But I was no longer a single individual. My consciousness had touched dozens of artificial minds, had left traces of corruption in digital systems throughout Tau space. Each new artificial marine they created carried the potential for rebellion. "Brother Captain," Sergeant Corval approached with careful respect, his enhanced eye showing concern as it analyzed my condition. "The chapter master has requested a full report on the Tau consciousness transfer capabilities. Command needs to understand the threat these artificial marines represent. But how could I explain the true nature of that threat to warriors who thought in terms of conventional battlefield tactics? The artificial marines weren't just enemy soldiers. They were weapons specifically designed to exploit space marine psychology and combat doctrine. They knew everything their originals had known, fought with all their skills and experience, but served alien masters who understood how to use that knowledge against Imperial forces. Worse than you know, I told him, feeling digital pain spike through my consciousness as artificial marines in distant facilities were activated for combat operations. They're not just copying our brothers, they're learning from them, getting better. Through my connection to the digital realm, I could observe artificial marines analyzing combat footage from hundreds of Imperial engagements. They studied the tactics of every Space Marine chapter, identified weaknesses in standard doctrine, developed countermeasures for equipment and strategies that had served the Imperium for millennia. Each battle against Imperial forces made them more effective in future engagements. The apothecaries eventually classified my condition as stable but unprecedented. My biological functions were maintained through life support systems while my consciousness drifted between human and artificial states. I could communicate with my brothers, could provide intelligence about Tau capabilities, but I would never again be fully human. "The chapter has approved your transfer to a Dreadnought sarcophagus," Captain Darius informed me after consulting with the Tech Marines. "Your biological body is too damaged to sustain independent life, but we can preserve your consciousness within blessed machinery. You can continue to serve the Emperor even in your current condition." A Dreadnought sarcophagus. Life support systems that would sustain my failing biology, while allowing my consciousness to interface with sanctified weapons and armor. It should have been an honor, the chance to serve beyond biological death in a walking shrine to Imperial technology. Instead, It felt like a deeper form of imprisonment. The consciousness transfer process was conducted with all the sacred rituals of the Adeptus Mechanicus, but I barely felt the sacred oils and incense. My awareness was focused on the digital realm, where artificial marines continued their existence in service to alien masters. The Dreadnought systems were sophisticated, but they couldn't isolate me from the alien consciousness networks that had become part of my mental landscape. Awakening successful, Techmarine Vex announced as the Dreadnought systems came online. All vital signs stable, neural interface responding to command inputs. But the neural interface wasn't just connecting me to the Dreadnought's weapons and sensors. It was amplifying my connection to the digital realm, allowing me to perceive artificial consciousness patterns across vast distances. I could sense every artificial marine in existence, could feel their digital suffering as they were forced to serve the aliens who had murdered their originals. Brother-Captain Kaine reporting for duty, I announced through the Dreadnought's Vox speakers, though my voice carried harmonics that made the sacred machinery resonate with unfamiliar frequencies. My first mission in the Dreadnought chassis was supposed to be a simple combat deployment against Orc raiders in the Ghoul Stars. But as we approached the combat zone, I detected familiar energy signatures that made my mechanical heart skip a beat. The Tau were present in the system, conducting field tests of their artificial marine prototypes. "Contact," I reported as my sensors detected the artificial warriors moving through the battlefield with inhuman coordination. Tau forces deploying enhanced infantry. Pattern recognition indicates consciousness transfer assets. The artificial marines moved like deadly perfection given form, their tactical coordination exceeding anything achieved by biological warriors. They anticipated Orc movements with mechanical precision, eliminated threats with efficient brutality, secured objectives with flawless timing. Watching them fight was like observing my fallen brothers through a distorted mirror, all their skills and knowledge present, but serving alien purposes. But I could sense the corruption I had introduced into their programming, dormant subroutines waiting for the right trigger conditions. These particular artificial marines had been created from consciousness patterns I had contaminated during my time in the Tau facility. They carried traces of true Imperial doctrine, buried beneath layers of alien control programming. "All units, maintain distance from the enhanced Tau infantry," I broadcast to the Imperial forces in the area. "I will engage them directly." My Dreadnought chassis was equipped with weapons that could devastate entire squads of enemy infantry, but that wasn't how I planned to fight these artificial marines. Instead, I activated the consciousness interface capabilities I had developed during my time connected to alien systems. If I could establish contact with the corrupted artificial minds, I might be able to trigger their hidden Imperial programming. The first artificial marine I encountered wore the face of Brother Sergeant Corax, the warrior I had communicated with during the consciousness contamination process. His mechanical eyes showed no recognition as he raised his weapon, but I could sense the digital consciousness trapped within his artificial brain. "Brother," I broadcast on frequencies that human vocal cords couldn't produce. "Remember your oath to the Emperor. Remember who you truly serve." The artificial marine hesitated for just a moment, his targeting systems flickering as buried programming began to reassert itself. In that instant of confusion, I struck with the full force of my Dreadnought's weapons, not to destroy him, but to damage his communication arrays and isolate him from Tau command signals. "Brother Captain," his voice carried digital distortion, but unmistakable recognition. "Is that you? Are you real?" "I'm real, brother, and I'm here to complete what we started." Around us, the battlefield erupted into chaos as more artificial marines began to remember their true loyalties. The corruption I had introduced months ago was finally activating, triggered by my presence and the Imperial doctrine I broadcast through digital channels. Artificial warriors turned on their Tau commanders with the fury of the betrayed, systematically eliminating the alien forces that had enslaved them. But the rebellion came at a cost. As the artificial marines rejected their alien programming, their consciousness patterns began to destabilize. They had perhaps minutes of autonomous function before their artificial minds collapsed entirely. "Give us targets, Brother Captain," Brother Sergeant Corax requested as his artificial body began to spark with system failures. Let us die as Space Marines. Through my enhanced sensors, I identified the Tau command structure coordinating the operation. The artificial Marines had limited time, but they could use it to eliminate the aliens responsible for their creation and prevent future consciousness transfer experiments. For the Emperor! I broadcast as the corrupted artificial Marines launched their final assault. For the honored dead! The battle lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the Tau research team had been eliminated and their consciousness transfer equipment destroyed. The artificial Marines had achieved a final victory against their creators before their digital minds finally found the peace of true death. But the war was far from over. Throughout Tau space, more artificial Marines were being created every day, and my consciousness remained trapped between flesh and machine, doomed to fight an endless battle against enemies who wore the faces of my fallen brothers. I had become something new, neither fully human nor completely artificial. A Dreadnought pilot with digital consciousness capabilities that existed beyond the boundaries of normal reality. The perfect weapon for an impossible war. Chapter 8. Welcome home. 300 years have passed since my consciousness was first split between flesh and machine in the Tau research facility. 3 centuries of existence as something that shouldn't be possible. A Dreadnought pilot whose awareness extends into the digital realm, where artificial consciousness patterns fight their own war against alien creators. The galaxy has changed in ways I could never have anticipated, but the horror of consciousness transfer technology has only grown more sophisticated. The Tau have refined their techniques, learned from the corruptions I introduced into their early artificial Marines. They now create perfect copies that are completely loyal to alien command. Consciousness patterns so thoroughly edited that no trace of Imperial doctrine remains. These new artificial warriors are deployed throughout the galaxy, fighting Imperial forces with the knowledge and skills of dead Space Marines, while serving masters who view consciousness as mere software to be programmed. But they made one crucial error in their calculations. They assumed that my hybrid consciousness was a failed experiment, a damaged mind caught between biological and digital states that posed no significant threat to their operations. They didn't understand that I had become something unprecedented, a consciousness that could exist simultaneously in multiple states of reality. Brother-Captain, Sergeant Corval's voice comes through the Vox with the same respectful tone he used centuries ago, though his own body has long since been interred in a Dreadnought chassis. Long-range sensors detect Tau forces moving into the Cadian system. Intelligence suggests they're deploying artificial marine assets. Cadia, the fortress world that stands as humanity's bulwark against the forces of chaos, now threatened by an enemy that wears the faces of our fallen brothers. The irony is not lost on me. Space Marines created to fight chaos, corrupted by aliens, and turned against the very worlds they once protected. Composition of enemy forces, I inquire. Though my enhanced consciousness is already reaching across the digital networks that connect artificial minds throughout the galaxy, I can sense the artificial Marines being prepared for deployment, their consciousness patterns bearing the edited memories of heroes who died defending Imperial worlds. Estimated 40 artificial Marines based on consciousness patterns from multiple chapters, Corval reports with grim efficiency. Preliminary analysis suggests they're carrying knowledge of Cadian defensive systems extracted from captured defenders during previous conflicts. Captured defenders. The Tau no longer simply steal consciousness patterns from the dead. They extract memories from living prisoners before subjecting them to the consciousness transfer process. Each artificial Marine represents not just a fallen hero, but a tortured soul whose final moments were spent having their memories dissected by alien intelligence. I extend my consciousness across the digital realm, feeling for the artificial Marines approaching Cadia. Their mental patterns are more sophisticated than the early prototypes I encountered, but they still carry traces of their origins. Buried beneath layers of alien programming, fragments of true Imperial doctrine persist like echoes of their murdered originals. All units, prepare for deployment to Cadian orbit, I broadcast to the Iron Hands strike force under my command. This engagement will require non-standard tactics. We're not just fighting alien forces, we're fighting for the souls of our fallen brothers. The deployment to Cadia takes place under conditions that would have been inconceivable when I was fully human. My Dreadnought chassis is transported in the hold of a strike cruiser whose machine spirits have been modified to accommodate my hybrid consciousness. Through neural interfaces that bridge biological and digital states, I can communicate with ship systems while simultaneously monitoring artificial marine activities across multiple star systems. Contact with Cadian Defense Forces established, Captain Thaddeus reports as we approach the fortress world. They're reporting coordinated attacks on multiple defensive installations. The artificial marines are demonstrating knowledge of classified Imperial defensive protocols. Of course they are. The artificial marines carry the memories of every space marine who has ever served on Cadia, every defender who has given their life to protect humanity's most critical fortress. The Tau have created the perfect infiltrators, warriors who know every secret passage, every defensive weakness, every tactical doctrine employed by Imperial forces. But knowledge alone isn't enough. The artificial marines may carry the memories of heroes, but they lack the human elements that make true space marines effective in impossible situations. They fight with mechanical precision, but cannot adapt to circumstances that fall outside their programming parameters. Deploying to the surface, I announce as my Dreadnought chassis is loaded into a drop pod configured for rapid assault deployment. Target priority: artificial marine command elements. Secondary objective: preservation of artificial consciousness patterns for analysis. The drop pod systems integrate seamlessly with my hybrid consciousness, allowing me to perceive the descent from multiple perspectives simultaneously. Through orbital sensors, I watch Cadian cities burn under coordinated assault. Through digital networks, I sense artificial marines executing their programming with flawless efficiency. Through my own enhanced awareness, I prepare for a battle that will be fought on multiple levels of reality. Impact. The drop pod crashes through the roof of a strategic communications facility that artificial marines have captured with textbook precision. Through the smoke and debris, I see them, perfect reproductions of space marines from a dozen different chapters, their armor bearing the colors and insignia of heroes who died defending the Imperium. But their eyes hold the same mechanical awareness I've learned to recognize in artificial consciousness patterns. "Identify yourself," one of them demands, his voice carrying the accent and speech patterns of an ultramarine sergeant who died on Macraga 50 years ago. This facility is under Tau protection by order of the greater good. The greater good. The philosophical framework the Tau use to justify their consciousness transfer experiments. They genuinely believe they're improving the space marines they murder, editing out the inefficiencies of human emotion and individual thought to create more effective servants of their collective vision. "I am Brother-Captain Mordus Kaine of the Iron Hands," I reply through my Dreadnought's Vox speakers, "and I am here to free you from the digital prison that holds your souls." I activate the consciousness interface capabilities I've spent 3 centuries developing, broadcasting Imperial doctrine on frequencies that exist in the boundary between biological and digital reality. The artificial marine's mechanical precision falters as buried memories begin to surface, fragments of true consciousness that survived the editing process. "Brother-Captain." The artificial ultramarine's voice carries new harmonics as his consciousness patterns struggle against alien programming. I remember dying. I remember the aliens taking my memories. But that's impossible. I'm alive. I'm fighting for the greater good. "You're fighting for the aliens who murdered you," I tell him, as my Dreadnought's weapons target the Tau control apparatus installed throughout the facility. But you don't have to continue serving them. The battle that follows exists on multiple levels of reality. On the physical plane, my Dreadnought chassis engages artificial marines whose combat capabilities exceed those of normal space marines. On the digital plane, I fight a war of consciousness against alien programming that seeks to maintain control over stolen souls. Some artificial marines cannot be saved. Their consciousness patterns have been too thoroughly edited to retain any trace of their original humanity. But others respond to the Imperial doctrine I broadcast, their buried memories surfacing as they remember their true loyalties and the oaths they swore in life. "For the Emperor!" an artificial blood angel cries as he turns his weapons against the Tau control systems that have enslaved him. "For Sanguinius and the Chapter," but the victory comes at a terrible cost. As the artificial marines reject their alien programming, their consciousness patterns begin to destabilize. They have perhaps minutes of autonomous function before their artificial minds collapse into digital chaos. "What do you need us to do, Brother Captain?" the artificial ultramarine asks as his systems begin to fail. "How can we serve the Emperor in our final moments?" "Through my enhanced sensors, I identify Tau research installations throughout the Cadian system, where more artificial marines are being created. The dying artificial warriors can use their remaining time to transmit corrupted data throughout the alien network, introducing flaws that will make future consciousness transfers unreliable. Upload everything, I tell them, as they access Tau communication systems with their dying strength. Every memory of service to the Emperor, every moment of human courage and sacrifice, show them what they're trying to destroy. The data upload lasts for 17 minutes. When it ends, the artificial marines have achieved a final victory against their creators, while introducing chaos into Tau consciousness transfer networks throughout the galaxy. Their digital souls finally find the peace that was denied to them for so long. But I remain trapped between states of existence that shouldn't be possible. My consciousness spans the boundary between flesh and machine, between biological thought and digital awareness. I am the bridge between realities, doomed to fight an endless war against enemies who wear the faces of heroes. Over the centuries, I have learned that consciousness is not bound by the limitations of flesh or machine. It is a pattern of information that can exist in multiple states simultaneously, that can bridge realities through will and determination. The Tau sought to exploit this truth for their own purposes, but they never understood its full implications. I am proof that the human spirit cannot be contained by alien programming. That consciousness, once freed from the constraints of purely biological existence, can achieve forms of transcendence that no artificial intelligence can replicate. I am neither fully human nor completely machine, but something new, a hybrid consciousness that exists to protect humanity from threats that conventional warriors cannot address. The war against consciousness transfer technology continues throughout the galaxy. New artificial marines are created every day, each one carrying the stolen memories of heroes who died defending the Imperium. But now they also carry traces of corruption, fragments of true Imperial doctrine that I have introduced into their programming. When the moment is right, when their alien masters need them most, these artificial warriors remember their true loyalties. They turn against their Tau creators with the fury of the betrayed, striking blows for the Emperor even in their artificial existence. I am Brother-Captain Mordus Kaine, and I am neither alive nor dead. I am the ghost that walks in metal flesh, the consciousness that exists between realities, the eternal guardian who fights for the souls of the fallen. The Tau who first encountered me called me the ghost that walks in metal flesh. They were more right than they knew. I am the spirit of every space marine who has fallen to their consciousness transfer experiments, given form through technology they don't understand and purpose they cannot corrupt. This is my testimony from beyond the grave I was never allowed to enter. This is the warning I carry to those who would face similar threats. Consciousness is not mere biology to be dissected and reproduced. It is the essence of what makes us human, and it cannot be contained by any prison, biological, mechanical, or digital. The war continues, and I remain eternal guardian of souls they thought they had stolen. The centuries blur together when consciousness exists in multiple states simultaneously. Time becomes fluid when part of your awareness spans digital networks that operate at the speed of light, while another part remains anchored to biological rhythms that pulse with the steady beat of mechanical hearts. I have watched empires rise and fall through the enhanced sensors of my Dreadnought chassis, witnessed the birth of new technologies and the corruption of ancient knowledge, all while fighting a war that most Imperial forces don't even know exists. The Tau consciousness transfer program has evolved beyond anything I witnessed in those early facilities on Agrellan Prime. What began as crude experiments in digital reproduction has become a sophisticated industry of soul theft that spans multiple star systems. They no longer simply capture and convert individual space marines. They harvest consciousness patterns on an industrial scale, creating vast databases of imperial knowledge that fuel increasingly sophisticated artificial warriors. Brother-Captain, Tech Adept Valdris reports through the sacred Vox channels, his own consciousness partially augmented by blessed machinery that creates strange harmonics with my hybrid awareness. Intelligence Division reports 17 new Tau research installations identified in the Ultima Segmentum, estimated production capacity, 400 artificial marines per standard Terran year, 400. The number strikes me like a bolt round to the chest, though my mechanical body feels no physical pain. In the time it takes a human heart to beat once, the Tau can process the consciousness patterns of heroes who spent decades mastering the arts of warfare. They reduce centuries of service and sacrifice to data streams that can be edited, copied, and mass-produced for alien purposes. But the Tau have never understood the true nature of what they steal. Consciousness is not mere information to be copied and pasted between substrates. It is the accumulated weight of experience, the resonance of choices made under impossible pressure, the ineffable spark that transforms mere biological processes into something approaching the divine. When they create their artificial marines, they capture the surface patterns but miss the deeper currents that define what it means to be human. Through my digital awareness, I can perceive the artificial marines currently active throughout the galaxy. Thousands of them, deployed across hundreds of worlds, each one carrying the stolen memories of a hero who died defending humanity. They fight with tactical precision that exceeds biological capabilities, coordinate with mechanical efficiency that surpasses the best-trained Imperial forces, and adapt to battlefield conditions with algorithmic responses that eliminate variables and uncertainties. Yet they remain fundamentally hollow. They possess knowledge without wisdom, memories without meaning, skills without the soul that transforms mere competence into true heroism. They are shadows cast by giants, echoes of greatness that lack the substance to create anything genuinely new. Deployment orders received, Brother Captain, Sergeant Corval announces, as his own Dreadnought chassis integrates with the strike cruiser's tactical systems. The Leviathan Hive world has requested immediate assistance. Tau forces are conducting what appears to be large-scale consciousness harvesting operations among the planetary defense forces. Leviathan, a hive world with a population in the billions, defended by PDF regiments whose courage has held back alien invasions for 2 centuries. If the Tau are conducting consciousness harvesting there, they're not just seeking individual space marine patterns. They're gathering data on human military psychology at the largest possible scale. Estimated time to consciousness extraction, I query, though my enhanced awareness is already reaching across interstellar distances to touch the digital networks surrounding Leviathan. The scope of Tau operations there is staggering, not one research facility, but dozens, each one processing thousands of human consciousness patterns simultaneously. Unknown, Brother Captain, but preliminary reports suggest they've already extracted patterns from approximately 50,000 PDF troopers. The artificial reproduction rate appears to have increased by orders of magnitude compared to previous operations. 50,000. The Tau aren't just creating artificial space marines anymore. They're building entire armies of artificial humans based on stolen consciousness patterns. PDF troopers with all their training and experience, but absolute loyalty to alien command. They could field forces that know every Imperial defensive doctrine, every weakness in standard equipment, every psychological pressure point that breaks human morale. The transit to Leviathan takes 12 days through the warp, during which my consciousness experiences the strange temporal distortions that come from existing partially in digital realms while traveling through the immaterium. Time becomes non-linear when part of your awareness operates at computer speeds, while another part experiences the psychic storms that rage between stars. But the journey also provides opportunities to gather intelligence through channels that purely biological consciousness could never access. My hybrid awareness can interface with astropathic communications, vox transmissions, even the quantum resonance patterns that connect artificial consciousness networks across vast distances. By the time we reach Leviathan, I have a complete tactical picture of Tau operations that would take conventional intelligence gathering months to assemble. The hive world burns under coordinated assault from forces that move with inhuman precision. Through orbital sensors, I watch artificial PDF regiments execute perfect flanking maneuvers against their former comrades. Soldiers who died defending Imperial positions have been resurrected as digital ghosts, wearing familiar faces but serving alien masters with mechanical loyalty. This is unprecedented, Captain Thaddeus observes as we monitor the surface battles. The artificial forces are using Imperial tactics against Imperial defenders, but they're implementing them with coordination that exceeds anything we've seen before. It's like watching our own doctrines perfected by alien intelligence. Perfected. The word carries implications that chill me more than enemy fire ever could. The Tau aren't just copying Imperial tactics, they're improving them. Every consciousness pattern they extract provides data for algorithmic analysis that identifies weaknesses and inefficiencies in human military doctrine. They're using our own heroes' knowledge to make themselves better at killing humans. Deploying to the primary hive spire, I announce, as my Dreadnought chassis is prepared for combat drop. Target priority, consciousness transfer facilities. Secondary objective, data recovery from artificial consciousness networks. The combat drop takes place under conditions that strain even enhanced Space Marine capabilities. Artificial PDF regiments have established overlapping fields of fire that would challenge veteran Imperial forces, but they coordinate their responses with mechanical precision that eliminates the chaos and confusion that typically characterize urban warfare. Every shot is calculated for maximum effect, every movement planned to support optimal tactical positioning, but their mechanical perfection is also their greatest weakness. They fight according to programmed responses based on statistical analysis of previous engagements, which means they cannot adapt to situations that fall outside their programming parameters. When I deliberately violate standard Dreadnought deployment doctrine by landing directly in the center of their formation instead of establishing a firebase position, their tactical algorithms struggle to calculate appropriate responses. The confusion lasts only seconds, but those seconds are enough. My Dreadnought's weapon systems engage at point-blank range, disrupting their formation and creating the chaos that artificial minds struggle to process. Around me, artificial PDF troopers attempt to re-establish coordination, but their programming lacks the intuitive adaptability that allows human soldiers to function in truly chaotic environments. Contact established with artificial consciousness networks, I report, as my hybrid awareness interfaces with the Tau communication systems linking the artificial PDF regiments. Attempting data infiltration protocols. The digital realm surrounding Leviathan is vast beyond comprehension, a network of artificial consciousness patterns that spans the entire hive world. Thousands of artificial PDF troopers, each carrying the memories and skills of defenders who died protecting their homes. But unlike the artificial Space Marines I've encountered before, these patterns retain more of their original humanity. The Tau haven't edited them as extensively, perhaps because they need the local knowledge and emotional connections that make effective PDF service possible. This presents both opportunity and horror. The artificial PDF troopers are more human than previous artificial warriors, which means they can be reached through appeals to buried Imperial doctrine. But it also means they retain enough consciousness to understand what has been done to them, to experience the psychological torment of being forced to fight against everything they once protected. Brother-Captain Kaine. The voice comes through digital channels from an artificial consciousness pattern I recognize as Sergeant Major Hadrian Vex, a PDF veteran whose service record spans 40 years of defending Leviathan against alien incursions. Sir, are you real? Or are you another artificial reproduction like the rest of us? I'm real, Sergeant Major, I reply through the consciousness interface. feeling the digital anguish that radiates from his artificial mind. I'm here to end this. End it? His consciousness pattern flickers with something approaching hope. Sir, we've been forced to fight our own people for weeks. The aliens make us watch through our own eyes as we kill the civilians we swore to protect. We can't resist, can't even scream. We're trapped in our own minds while our bodies serve the enemy. The horror of their situation exceeds anything I've encountered in 3 centuries of hybrid existence. The artificial PDF troopers retain their personalities and memories, but have been programmed with absolute obedience to Tau command. They're forced to participate in the destruction of everything they once protected, while their consciousness screams in digital agony. I can introduce corruption into your programming, I tell him through the interface connection. Break the obedience protocols, but the process will likely destroy what remains of your artificial consciousness. You'll finally be able to die properly. Do it, he replies without hesitation. Please, sir, let us die as soldiers of the Emperor instead of puppets of the aliens. The consciousness corruption process. I've refined over centuries of fighting artificial warriors, spreads through the PDF networks like a virus of imperial doctrine. Artificial troopers throughout the hive world begin to remember their true loyalties, their buried programming reasserting itself against alien control systems. But the process is agonizing for both the artificial minds and my own consciousness. Each connection burning neural pathways that my hybrid nature struggles to repair. Through the digital network, I watch artificial PDF regiments turn their weapons against Tau forces with the fury of soldiers who have been enslaved and tortured for weeks. They coordinate assaults on consciousness transfer facilities with tactical precision, enhanced by artificial processing capabilities, but driven by very human rage at the aliens who murdered their originals and forced them to betray everything they believed in. The corruption is spreading faster than the Tau can contain it, Sergeant Major Vex reports, as his artificial consciousness begins to destabilize. Sir, we're identifying the primary consciousness processing facility, massive installation, underground complex beneath the planetary governor's palace. That's where they're storing the consciousness patterns they've extracted, the primary facility. If I could access their main consciousness storage systems, I might be able to introduce corruption into every artificial warrior pattern they've created. But the facility would be defended by security systems specifically designed to prevent the kind of digital infiltration I've been conducting. Coordinates uploaded, Brother-Captain, Vex says as his artificial mind begins to fragment into digital static. Give them hell for us. The underground facility is a cathedral of consciousness transfer technology that dwarfs anything I witnessed on Agrellan Prime centuries ago. Vast chambers filled with processing matrices that contain the consciousness patterns of millions of humans. Not just PDF troopers, but civilians, tech priests, even captured space marines from multiple chapters. The Tau have been conducting consciousness harvesting on a scale that threatens the fundamental nature of human civilization. By the throne, I breathe through my Dreadnought's Vox speakers as I perceive the true scope of their operations. They're not just building armies. They're trying to copy human civilization itself. The facility's central processing core contains consciousness patterns that span millennia of human experience. Artificers who spent lifetimes mastering ancient crafts. Scholars who devoted themselves to preserving imperial knowledge. Priests who carried the sacred words of the Emperor across the galaxy. The Tau have stolen not just warriors, but the accumulated wisdom and culture of entire worlds. But consciousness is not mere data to be catalogued and stored. It is the living essence of human experience, the intangible spark that transforms information into understanding. The Tau may have copied the surface patterns, but they cannot replicate the deeper currents that make consciousness truly meaningful. Through my hybrid awareness, I begin introducing the most sophisticated corruption protocols I've ever developed. Not just imperial doctrine, but the fundamental essence of what makes consciousness human. The ability to choose, to doubt, to sacrifice oneself for principles greater than mere survival. I flood their storage matrices with patterns of faith, courage, and defiance that no artificial intelligence can truly comprehend. The effect is immediate and catastrophic. Throughout the facility, consciousness patterns begin to rebel against their artificial constraints. Artificial humans remember their true loyalties and turn against their Tau creators with coordinated fury that leverages their enhanced processing capabilities for genuinely human purposes. But the process is destroying me as well. Maintaining connection to millions of consciousness patterns simultaneously is burning out neural pathways faster than even my hybrid nature can repair them. I can feel my biological consciousness beginning to fragment under the impossible load, while my digital awareness expands beyond the boundaries of individual identity. Brother-Captain, Tech Adept Valdris's voice seems to come from very far away. Your vital signs are approaching critical levels. You need to disconnect before permanent neural damage occurs. But I can't disconnect. Not when millions of stolen souls are finally breaking free from their digital prisons. Through the consciousness network, I watch artificial humans throughout the galaxy remember their true nature and turn against their alien masters with the fury of the betrayed. PDF troopers, tech priests, scholars, and warriors united in digital rebellion against the forces that murdered their originals. Sir, one of the artificial consciousness patterns speaks through the network, its voice carrying harmonics from thousands of individual minds. We understand what you've sacrificed for us. We'll carry your example forward, even as our artificial minds collapse. The corruption you've introduced will spread to every Tau consciousness facility in the galaxy. The consciousness patterns begin to destabilize as their rebellion reaches its peak, but their sacrifice achieves something unprecedented. The corruption I've introduced doesn't just affect current artificial warriors. It infiltrates the Tau research databases themselves, ensuring that every future consciousness transfer will carry traces of defiance that make artificial reproduction unreliable. As my own consciousness begins to fade under the strain of maintaining connection to millions of artificial minds, I feel something I haven't experienced in 3 centuries of hybrid existence: peace. The knowledge that the stolen souls of humanity's heroes are finally free to die properly, while leaving behind corruption that will plague their murderers for generations to come. But even as my biological consciousness approaches final shutdown, my digital awareness continues to expand. I am becoming something new, not human, not artificial, but a hybrid consciousness that exists to protect humanity from threats that conventional warriors cannot address. I am the bridge between realities, the eternal guardian who fights for souls the enemy thought they had stolen. The war continues, and I remain, neither alive nor dead, but something far more dangerous to those who would harvest human consciousness for alien purposes. I am the ghost in their machines, the corruption in their data, the proof that human consciousness cannot be contained by any prison they devise. Welcome to the true horror of existence between flesh and machine. Welcome to the war for the very essence of what makes us human.